at UBC and BCIT on the Biotechnology Honors Program. It is a co-op mandatory program, and I'll spend some time on the co-op experiences later on. And then after that, I went on to graduate school and I did my PhD with Dr. Marcel Bally through the Pathology and Laboratory Medicine department at UBC, and that's actually where I met Jessica. And after I finished my PhD, I took on a very different path than most people. Usually after graduate studies, you either find a real job or you go into a postdoctoral fellow position and try to get more research experience. And what I ended up doing was a bit of a postdoc and also an entrepreneurship path, which is starting a biotech company locally. I was a co-founder and director of operations, and I'll go into more detail about what that experience was like, and for some of you who might be interested in that path or who have never thought about it and would consider it after this talk maybe. And then finally, I have moved on from the entrepreneurship part and started working at Genevent Sciences as a project and alliance manager, and I continue to work there right now. And that's really deeper into the pharmaceutical industry side of things, and we can talk about the industry side in a bit, as a lot of you are interested in that. So my next question for you is whether you have considered or are considering some kind of undergraduate work opportunity. So here's the next question, and I'll give you 30 seconds. You probably don't need that much time this time since you already have it set up. So what are your thoughts on undergraduate working opportunities or co-op? So either, I think there are also just plain work study programs or co-op experiences. Have you already considered applying? Are you applying? Or you're thinking that the co-op will delay your graduation, so that's not really what you're interested in? You want to finish your degrees as soon as possible and move on? Or do you not know what it is? Have you heard of it? Or you just don't care at this moment? And that's fine too. Okay, has everybody gotten a chance to fill this out? Do you guys need more time?
Looks like we're good.
Okay. Great. So, wow, like 78% of you are planning or already have applied to co-op or other undergraduate position, and that's great to hear. And I'll tell you more about my experience on the next slide. For some of you, you feel like, I'm not sure what I care about right now. Maybe you have something else lined up for your full-time position after graduation, and it does not hurt for you to hear about the experience that I have, and it may or may not change your mind, and that's completely fine. It is your choice. Delaying graduation for sure. Your undergraduate will change from 4 years to 5 years, and 1 year is a significant amount of time, and we can discuss whether or not you think that may or may not be worthwhile for you. And it's okay to not know what it is, and that's exactly what I'm here for. And just want to let you guys know that if you guys are having any questions during my presentation about anything that I talk about, you're welcome to just raise your arm, and I'm sure Jessica will stop me and get that question for me. Okay, so undergraduate research co-op experience. So like I said, I went into a co-op mandatory program, and how that worked was that when I was, I'm not sure if they still do that now, but there's an interview process for the biotechnology program. And at the interview, we, at the same time, were interviewed for co-op eligibility as well. So I understand that at UBC, it's a little bit different because you're supposed to apply for the co-op program separately, and there's a co-op office that interviews you and see whether or not you check all the boxes that they need for you to be eligible for co-op. And for us, it was basically if you gain entry into the program, you are automatically in the co-op program. And so I did quite a few experiences with my co-op opportunities, and I actually did it on purpose. I spent some time at a research institution. My first co-op experience was at the Jack Bell Research Center. It is now called the Prostate Center, I believe. And I worked on combination treatments for bladder cancer. And at my second co-op experience, I decided to come back to the university and see what it's like, whether there's any difference between university and a research institution. So I went into an academic lab and I focused more on biochemistry. So it's very different from, looking at cancer cells. This is more looking at in vitro works that look at the function of a certain a glycine receptor, look at the structure function relationships, what happens when we mutate a specific amino acid, how does that change the function of that receptor. So that was a very different experience. It was a more biochemistry based experience. And finally, my third co-op opportunity was spent at a biotech company. It was called Techmera at the time, and I'll get back to that later on. Techmera was a company that focused on this delivery of siRNA and to treat various diseases, but at the time that I was there, I was most interested in the oncology department, so I actually joined the team there to work on an oncology project. They also had inflammatory diseases and other types of disease of interest at the time. And that has a huge impact on how I decided to make certain decisions for my career. And I'll get back to that in a bit. So an experience in a research institution, academia, and also the biotech industry. And finally, I finished my undergraduate thesis with another lab at UBC, and that was in the life sciences building, and that's why the picture is there, because both of my UBC experiences were at the life sciences building, which is just right across the street from you. For that project, what I was focusing on was the culturing of anaerobic bacteria and understanding, what kind of anaerobic bacteria are in the seas of our coast. So that's an actually very interesting project where the investigator actually went out to the coastal waters and took samples, and I was analyzing some of those samples and trying to culture some of the anaerobic bacteria there. So what have I learned from these experiences is that, first of all, I figured out that I was very interested in oncology treatments and working towards developing new treatments for cancer patients. But at the same time, it was also very important for me to realize that I had no interest in developing a career in the area of microbiology. After that experience, I was so tired of culturing anaerobic bacteria that I told myself I would not consider a graduate program in microbiology. So I wanted to bring that up because I want all of you to understand that you may have a lot of different experiences ahead of you. Some of them may be positive, some of them may not be as positive, but those are not wasted, because it's really important to understand yourself by learning what you don't like, as much as it is important to know what you do enjoy and what you do want to work on in the future. So from an undergraduate perspective, I want to talk about what it's like being in academia versus in industry. And this will be very interesting for those of you who are interested in the industry and want to get an understanding of what it's like there. So when you work in an academic lab, you report to a senior graduate student or postdoc as an undergraduate, okay? If you're a graduate student, then obviously you work with the scientist or the investigator, what we call the prof or the PI. But as an undergraduate student, when you're in a co-op position, you report to someone who's a bit more senior, usually not the principal investigator. You tend to have a very project-specific job function or functions. And the reason I say that is because It really depends on the type of supervisor you have. And I want to encourage you to try to figure out what the person is like before you commit to that co-op job as well. Some supervisors are a little bit more hands-off. Some supervisors tend to micromanage a little bit more. So in some co-op positions, you may be more like a tech where you learn a certain lab skill and then you perform that lab skill over and over and over again. And then the supervisor will design the experiment and let you do the work, and then they'll analyze the data and discuss the data with you. At some positions, you may encounter a supervisor who will be like, well, this is the project. Why don't you come up with what you want to do and we can discuss. And then you see more of the entire project and you're a little bit more hands-on on all aspects of the project, including the designing of experiments, conducting the experiment and analyzing the data and presenting the data. In academia, resources are usually restricted because grant money is very hard to come by, but it could also spark creativity. So you have to be very creative in how you come about completing that task with restricted resources. And then finally, most people who hire co-op students, they want an extra pair of hands that they don't need to hold all the time. And that means independence is key. You need to be able to self-motivate to work on the project, and you need to be able to function without someone watching over you all the time. It's also not the most comfortable to have someone looking at you while you're working on your experiment. So it's really important for you to be able to work independently, and that's something that you want to be able to demonstrate at an interview. For example, if you're trying to get a co-op job, you want to be able to show that you can be working with minimal supervision and you're self-motivated. For the industry side of things, usually most companies are more compartmentalized. There are different departments. You may be working on a team that is definitely part of a bigger wheel. So you may be working on a product, but a specific part of the product. You may be working on one machine, the entire co-op experience. So it's a very focused function. You may or may not see the entire picture because the project may be too big for you to see everything. And what you really need to be able to do is to work with people. So it is not that you can just, take your lab book, go into the lab and not see anybody for 8 hours and come back and say, oh, this is what I have. You need to be able to share with the team and work in a team environment. And that's what you want to highlight if you go on to a job interview or a co-op job interview in the industry. You want to share that or share experiences from yourself that demonstrate that you can work with people and you have good communication skills, because that is very important in the industry setting. Not that these skills are not important in the academia setting, but then they definitely want more of that in the industry. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so for those of you who don't really care about the undergraduate research or co-op experience, or those of you who are still thinking about it, I do think that from my perspective and my experience, that it is the best way for you to learn what is for you and also what is not for you. The more experiences that you have, the more doors you open for yourself. And it's very hard to get your first co-op job, I would say, because you don't have any experience and everyone is looking for someone with experience. But you have to start somewhere, and it's much easier to start when you're an undergraduate student compared to when you have already graduated and you're looking for your first job. The reason I say that is because a lot of people have co-op experiences now, and if you're out there, you've graduated a year earlier, but you don't have any work experience in the field that you're interested in, it becomes much harder for them to hire you compared to someone who already has an experience in the relevant area. I would also encourage you to start building your network. Your supervisor, your prof, may not be the person who will be hiring you, may not be the person it's used by almost everybody. Something you should consider as well is to look through your LinkedIn if you're interested in,
Sorry, Amy,
if you're in,
you cut out for about 2 minutes, but
Oh.
we're back now, and I think we were
Okay.
talking about building your network. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, okay. No, it's good. It's good to let me know. So I was talking about building your network. It's very important for you to start building your network now. Your supervisor or your prof is a good place to start. They may not be the person to get you the job you're interested in, but they may know someone who is doing something that you think you would want to do. Nowadays, a lot of people are on LinkedIn as well. So what you could do is you can go on LinkedIn and see if, the person that you're interested in working with knows someone in your network. So you could do that by, reaching out to your own network and see if they can get you a coffee chat with that person that you would like to meet. It's very important to know what you're getting yourself into before committing to it. If med school is your goal right now, if some of you are interested in med school or pharmacy school, my question for you is, have you talked to a doctor or pharmacist about their day-to-day, about what is their job like, what is it that they really enjoy about their work, and what is it that they really don't like about their work? Can you see yourself in that role? Are you okay with the pros and cons that come with each job? Each job is gonna be difficult. There is no easy job out there. There will be some aspects of that job that you will love and some aspect that you will hate. Are you okay to bear with the parts that you will not like? So don't be afraid to reach out, and that's really my message for you, whether or not you actually end up with an undergraduate experience. It's still important for you to start building your network. So I spent some time doing research at BC Cancer, and that was my graduate research experience. Just a brief overview of what I did was I was at the time working on lung cancer, which is still continues to be the leading cause of cancer-related deaths in both men and women worldwide. So my project focused on a genome screen that was looking for targets that could be inhibited to improve the treatment outcome of standard chemotherapy. It's a way of designing drug combinations, and that was what I was interested in. It was how can you properly design drug combinations that will improve the treatment outcome without increasing the toxicity on patients. Now, for lung cancer, there are a lot of other therapies available now, so obviously this is a little bit outdated, but that was what I was working on at the time. So for the graduate research experience, what I spent a lot of time doing was really reading journal articles, getting updated information on the disease indication, on what's available out there, what other people are doing, designing experiments, sourcing materials for my experiments, conducting the experiments, analyzing the results, collaborating with other groups, which is another really important part of your graduate experience is, again, collaboration and networking. Reporting progress, being able to present what you've done is very important. That enhances your communication skills and also enhances your public speaking skills. Success for graduate research is tied to the ability to make progress. So for those of you interested in professional schools, as long as you can get in, you have a curriculum, you complete the curriculum, and you usually can complete them within a set number of years, and then you're done. With graduate research, for those of you who might be interested in it, it's really all about making progress. It doesn't matter if you are getting positive or negative data. What needs to happen is you need to learn how to do your experiments or design your experiments correctly so that you're making progress and proving or not proving a point. And that could take a long time or a very short time depending on how much data you can collect within a certain period of time. So some people take 5 years to complete their PhD research, some people take 7 years, and there are people who take 10 years. So in terms of what I did there, we were looking at a candidate therapeutic target called PAPSS1. It's a protein that functions as a sulfonate donors in physiological reactions. It's not very well known in the field of oncology, and that's why it was a very interesting target. And what we found was that if we could silence that particular gene, the cancer cells, the lung cancer cells shown here, would be more susceptible to cisplatin or chemotherapy. So just a little mini video to show what we were doing is that you can see on the scramble, which is a control, the lung cancer cells continue to grow, whereas with the gene knockdown, the lung cancer cells on the right actually are dying from apoptosis much faster than the control cells. So how research work is that you make an observation, which is what I just showed you, and then you want to validate the target in different types of models, so including cells. I also worked with zebrafish and also in mice, and I'll show some of that data briefly. And we also correlated some of that data with existing patient cancer databases to try to show the world that maybe this target is actually relevant. So what I'm showing here is that you can see patients, cancer patients with low PAPSS1 expression, for example, would be more susceptible to cisplatin treatment. So this is what we did in a mouse model. We have silenced the gene in one of the cell lines, and then we inoculated the mice with that so that they would grow a tumor that has either the normal parental genome versus a control short hairpin RNA, and then a short hairpin RNA that targets and silence or knock down our gene of interest. And then we looked at how fast the tumor would grow over time. And you can see here that the particular cell line which had the gene knockdown actually resulted in tumors that were a bit smaller than the parental ones. And how this correlated with patients is that we started digging into patient databases, and what we found was that patients with the particular type of cancer that we're interested in, if they have a lower PAPSS1 expression, their survival their chance of survival is actually higher. So this is percent survival over time, and how you read this is basically the higher the line, the more likely they're going to survive. So let's see if I can get this cursor. There. Okay. So the higher, this line means that they're surviving much higher. There's survival time is much higher than the other people with a higher gene expression here. So we looked at both non-small cell lung cancer patients as well as ovarian cancer patients. So you can see the difference is still there, but not as nice in ovarian cancer patients. This is just a brief overview of what we were doing with my PhD project, and for those of you who might be interested in graduate research. But what I do want to highlight is what I learned over time with graduate studies. It is an academic experience. It is considered what we call higher education. What is it that you can really get out of it over that time that you spent on your research project? The first thing that comes up is really the most important. It is persistence and perseverance. You learn to fail. You learn to fail and try again and change and improve yourself over time. And you need to be able to get results that can make progress so that you can graduate. Success also requires collaboration. Again, this is all about networking. So from my PhD experience, I was able to travel for conferences, present my research, and also collaborate with labs across Canada and all over the world. So one experience that I had was I actually spent a couple of weeks at Halifax working with a prof there that specializes in zebrafish research, and I learned how to work with zebrafish and what kind of diseases they were treating. It was a very fascinating experience for me, and I think that's also a great travel experience, collaboration experience, and We published papers together. It also helped me understand my passion for translational research. I'm very interested in making sure that the research that we were doing could have a potential of reaching patients, and that also helped me move forward as I continued my career path. And finally, having the right mentor is tremendously important. I was very lucky to be in Dr. Marcel Valley's lab. He was fabulous as a mentor. He was very hands-off, and like I said, you need to find the right supervisor. Some supervisors are a lot more hands-on and would like to know every step that you're making when you're doing your research, whereas he's a bit more hands-off, and you need to be very self-driven in order to succeed in that lab. But at the same time, he provided a lot of valuable guidance, and he allowed me to learn through my exploration and my own curiosity. So stepping away from research and getting more to the entrepreneurship side, during my PhD, I actually had some extra time when I was in my third or fourth year. So I started a project on liposome. One of the things I want to bring up is that, like I said, Marcel was a great supervisor. He gave me a great deal of flexibility. His expertise was actually in liposomes, which is, as you can see here, and some of you might already know because their lipid nanoparticles are so popular now, is that it's basically a fat bubble with a phospholipid bilayer and an aqueous core. So liposome is where you can use the inner core to load a hydrophilic drug, or you can embed a hydrophobic drug or a lipophilic drug into the phospholipid bilayer, and that becomes a drug carrier, and it kind of shields the body from seeing the drug and allow the drug to be carried to where it needs to go without being metabolized. So while I was working on my PhD project, which is a lot more molecular biology based, I started a project on liposome, and it involves a technology called what we call the Metaplex technology later on. And this led to the start of Cooper's Pharmaceuticals, which is what I would like to talk about next. So what this is about is basically a technology. So a lot of drugs and some of you probably already know about this from your farm size studies, is that a lot of drug candidates have poor in vivo properties. That means they're not bioavailable. They have very limited utility when you inject them intravenously. They have very suboptimal delivery of the active components to the site that is needed. So, for example, you can see that when we put a cancer drug into water, for example, it's not being, it can't be administered because it's just a precipitate. And we know that this is not safe for administration. So what the Metaplex technology does is that it allows us to load that drug into liposomes, and it can now be administered as a more homogeneous solution. So formulation is a key to drug development, and how you make that drug available to the body is very important. So at Cupris, what we did was we started something called the Metaplex platform. So we have nanoparticles or liposomes that have a metal ion inside. And then we have these poorly soluble small molecule drugs that are capable of treating cancer. But because they're so poorly soluble, they can't be injected into mice, for example, or let alone humans. So what we did is that we allowed them to use their metal coordinating ability. So these are all drugs that can form metal complexes, and we load them into the liposomes using that metal ion gradient. That allows the drug to be solubilized and formulated into liposome formulations that can be injected. So an example of this is that I was working on a project where the drug was could only be dissolved at low pH. So the free drug is at pH 3.5, and it's really hard for us to be injecting that kind of acidic solution into mice. So then we decided to try the Metaplex technology. So we have liposomes at pH 7, and this drug coordinates with a copper ion. So we have copper ions inside those liposomes, and then we would add the free drug and allow them to cross the phospholipid bilayer and coordinate with the metal ion inside. And you can see that the metaplex formulation is now blue because of the metal complex that changes color. And as you can see here with the free drug, once you inject them into mice, it's pretty much gone from the blood compartment very quickly. Whereas with the Metaplex product, we can actually control the circulation lifetime a lot more to allow it to extend that circulation lifetime and stay in the plasma compartment for longer. And with our product, you can see that that really truly delays tumor growth in the mice. And this is an example of what we've done at the in vivo level. So these are the type of work that the research that we were doing for Cooper's Pharmaceuticals. And I just want to give you an idea of what was done there. And the Metaplex platform obviously had to be something that was patentable for us to build a company around it. And that's where a lot of these knowledge has to come in when you're starting a business or starting a biotechnology company. So my role there is probably what you're interested in. How did I change from going from my graduate studies to a scientist entrepreneur? And then later on, I took over as the director of operations. And a lot of that has to do with continuous learning. So as a graduate student, I learned how to be a researcher, how to be a scientist, but I had no skills in entrepreneurship. And that really came from courses and workshops with E at UBC, entrepreneurship at UBC, as well as this SFU BD School of Business. They have workshops and programs that are available for undergraduate students or graduate students to allow them to learn how to start a business. I was working with a lot of experts in different areas in HR and BD, business development, intellectual property. I was even learning accounting in order to operate that startup company. I took project management courses to understand how what the project cycle is like, how to manage a project, what we need in order for projects to succeed. I took leadership courses. And also it was all about learning to develop an entrepreneur mindset. And that is really the shift in my career to get me to where I am now and help me decide how I want to move forward in my career. So in terms of developing an entrepreneurial mindset, I want to talk about the difference or the similarities between a scientist and an entrepreneur. First of all, technology and sciences versus culture. When you're a scientist and you're you're studying what you're working on right now, you have a research project, you focus mostly on the technology and the science. What matters is whether that science works. And obviously that's really important for collecting the data correctly, making sure that you perform your experiments properly, that your data is reproducible and true. Versus culture, an entrepreneur also has to look at culture, which is how you want your company to be like. How do people behave in that company? As much as you can have the best science and technology, if your culture is terrible in the company, your business will still fail. What you want versus what the market wants. So as a scientist, we are treating our research like our own little baby. And so we know what we want out of it. We know what we're trying to make out of it. But the question is, from a business perspective, is that what the market wants? For example, if I want to treat lung cancer, what kind of drugs are out there already? Is your new research, your coolest technology at this time, is it competitive enough to have a space in the market? Because as we know, resources out there in the real world is really restricted. Are we able to get funding for what we want to do? Can we prove that the market needs this product? And finally, what is your ultimate goal? So I would almost argue that your ultimate goal as a scientist and as an entrepreneur is probably very similar. Scientists want their research to get out there and to help people, to bring products to the market, and that's the same for entrepreneurs, for most entrepreneurs at least, that You need to be able to bring a product to the market and to treat patients. There are actually a lot more similarities than you think there are between someone like a scientist and someone who's in business. The hard skills might be different. You may need lab-specific techniques for scientists, and for a lot of entrepreneurs in biotech, they also have that background. They also have a scientific background of some sort before they step into that role. But what they really need to also learn how to do is, understand finance, accounting, marketing, innovation management. How do you manage an innovation? How do you protect that innovation from, through patenting strategies? How do you patent? There are a lot of hard skills on that side that needs to be learned. And in terms of soft skills, communication, having the adaptability, confidence, resilience, problem solving, critical thinking, all of those are really shared between a scientist and an entrepreneur. It may be applied differently, but definitely soft skills are all transferable. And finally, resources and strategy planning. When you're a scientist, you look at project outlines, you submit grants. You have to understand what the unmet needs are. You still have to understand the market. You understand what the goals are for the project in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, and you have to find resources to make progress with the project. Whereas with a business or an operational plan, you need to do a little bit more market research, I would say. You need to do what we call customer discovery. You need to understand whether or not what you're trying to develop actually has a market for it. Are patients interested in your product? Let's consider something like something that's very common right now is, let's say, something like an obesity drug. It may be very popular or there may be a market in North America, but you may not see that market behave the same when you're in Asia, for example, where the population may not be obese compared to, it may be like 10% of people are obese versus 40%. So you need to look at what is it that your customers want and whether or not you actually have something that is needed by that population of interest. What are the corporate objectives in the next year, 2 years, 5 years? So we're now talking about goals, and it's the same thing as having a project-specific goal, but now you're looking at a bigger picture of the corporate objectives. How do we keep this company running? How many people are you having to pay from a salary perspective? What kind of objectives do we need to achieve in order to make progress for the company and to survive the next couple of years? So again, you plan and find resources to achieve corporate objectives. There are definitely a lot more similarities than you think. So if you learn to become a scientist, for example, you can probably transition into an entrepreneur with some additional training. It's not, they're not completely different, and there are a lot of things that you can transfer from what you already know. So every step along the way, you want to ask yourself, what have I learned, and what is it that will allow me to figure out what my next step will be? I definitely did not expect to start a company, and that was something that happened by chance, and it was the right time. We started a new company. I learned how to consider business strategies, how to look at the different components of a new startup company, how to operate a startup company, what are the pros and the cons. So I do also learn a lot about myself. So I love the science, and I also love working with people. And that may not be the case for you, and you should be able to find the career path that suits you the most. Don't be afraid to take on challenges and opportunities. If a door opens up, you should consider taking it, even if it looks challenging. I never thought I would become an entrepreneur when I, started my undergraduate degree. Like I said, I didn't even know I was going to grad school until, the last co-op job that I was taking, and someone asked if I would be interested in graduate school, and that's when I really started considering it. Keep learning and keep taking proactive roles to grow personally and professionally. Continue to build and maintain your network. So that's really important that you you continue to work with people, continue to network. I know that's not what most people like. A lot of people, especially when you're in the science area, a lot of us want to keep to ourselves and build ourselves internally, but it is very important to still network and maintain that network. Because you never know when you're gonna need the next job and the people that may be able to help you get to where you want to get to. It's also really important to understand that as you're growing, your perspective will change, what you want will change, and what you want from your career will also change. So keep that door open, and I think that, by building and maintaining your network, you can really get to any place that you will want to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my current role now as a project and alliance manager. So I just want to kind of talk about what strategic partnerships are. So what I'm doing now is managing partnered programs on the development of therapeutics and vaccines using the company's proprietary lipid nanoparticle platform, LNP, where we provide the delivery technology and our partner contributes the payload. So this is a true collaboration where a company may have a very cool gene therapy target that they have, where they have a payload that they believe will succeed in treating certain type of genetic diseases. And where we come in is we provide the lipid LNP platform so that we can deliver their payload to where they would want it to go. And then we also provide support to help the partner get into clinical trials. So I spent about 10 years of my life working on drug discovery, research, basic research, and that entrepreneurship experience really taught me that I want to be more involved in this second part of the process, which is going through drug development, preclinical research, and getting into the phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials. So this experience that I'm currently having right now is also also involves a lot of growing and opportunities for me to learn something new. For example, how to scale up drug products so that they can be manufactured under GMP and get into patients. So I've witnessed multiple programs already where we can get our products into patients at phase 1 clinical trial, and that is tremendously satisfying from a work perspective. What I'm doing is very different from what I did before. When I was a graduate student and when I started Cuprous Pharmaceuticals, I spent a lot of time being a scientist, being at the bench, doing the research. But now I'm focusing a lot more on managing the programs, making sure that we are meeting timelines and we have the right budget to get our product to the clinic. So one of the more difficult choices for me getting out of Cuprous Pharmaceutical was to really choose between the science versus the management stream, because I really do love the science. I like the basic research. I was interested in all kinds of technologies that we were using to discover new biologies and discover new treatments. However, what I really realized after going through all the entrepreneurship program is that I want to start looking at kind of zooming out from that position and kind of want to look at the bigger picture of the whole project and looking at multiple aspects, whether it is the finances or the marketing, the competitive landscape of that project. This is really helpful for me to understand where I am at with the project. So a lot of times, actually most of the time, the science is great and the things are going, research-wise, it's going in the right direction. But a lot of times projects have to be terminated because, first of all, maybe they didn't translate into patients. Secondly, the resources and the company's finances don't allow it to be developed, or sometimes maybe someone else came up with a product faster than us that is superior than what we have. So all of these can affect whether or not a drug get into the market. And what am I learning now is really change management. We also work a lot with big pharmas. We collaborate with big pharmaceutical companies. So I know how they operate. I learned how to manage larger programs and strategic partnerships, how to work with different pharmaceutical companies, how to operate in an environment with larger teams and more departments relative to a startup company. So working with 5 to 10 people is very different from working with 50 to 100 people. How to manage internal relationships to optimize team performance. That is also something that is crucial to my role as a project and alliance manager. So project and alliance managers really look at the whole project, the bigger picture, and we focus as well the alliance part, which is maintaining our relationships with our partners. So I hope that kind of gives you a nice perspective of some of my experiences and whether or not this is helpful. I really hope that there's something you can take from this presentation. Again, when you're going through your own experience, you want to look at and review and reflect on what have you learned at each stage, because that might help you just learn a lot more about yourself. It's all about self-discovery and what you want and what you will experience is going to change over time, and you want to make sure that you have all the doors open for you as much as possible. So I just thought that I could come up with an example of some of the things that might help you figure out how you want to proceed with your course decisions or your career decisions. So this is just an example. Let's say if I want to cure cancer being my ultimate goal, I want to cure cancer. So the question that you want to ask yourself is, okay, if I want to cure cancer, there are a lot of ways to do it. Do I want to work with patients? Do you want to be a doctor, like family physicians? Do you want to be an oncologist? Do you actually want to be a doctor who is involved in clinical trials instead? Do you want to be a researcher? Do you want to be a healthcare staff? Like, are you more interested in taking care of the patients who are going through cancer treatments? Are you interested in being a technician, like imaging? Or are you more interested in administrative roles? And are you interested in public health, right? So there are a lot of ways that you can contribute to this whole network that is involved in curing cancer, for example, or treating cancer. Do you want to be part of scientific innovations? So my work was mostly on therapeutics, but there are a lot of other aspects to research that could impact scientific innovations. For example, some companies work on diagnostics. Are you interested in developing new screens that could help people diagnose their cancer earlier and so that they have a better chance of surviving? Are you interested in making kits, imaging reagents? Are you interested in the formulation side of therapeutics? Are you interested in vaccines? Are you interested in manufacturing? Now, there's also commercialization. Are you interested in technology transfer? Are you interested in business development and sales? Are you interested in working with doctors and introducing new pharmaceutical products to them? So there are specific job positions that do that kind of function. Are you interested in intellectual property or being part of the healthcare authorities? So these are just some ideas of how one simple goal of treating or curing cancer can lead to a lot of different opportunities that you can explore and figure out what is best for yourself. So one last thing that I want you to consider, and think about for yourself is really, me telling you my experience hopefully is helpful to you in some way, but I just thought that for your own experience, you may want to start asking yourself some of these questions. What are your unique abilities? A unique ability is something that you're interested in and you're also very good at. So if you're very interested in something, but you're not very good at it, and we all have those, that's just, a hobby. You can also be really good at making spreadsheets, but you actually hate making spreadsheets. then that's not a unique ability. A unique ability is something that you're good at and you're interested in, and something that you can further develop. So ask yourself what that unique ability is, because you need to do something that you would actually enjoy with like a 40, 60-year career ahead of you. What have you learned about yourself so far from your own experience? For example, do you like working in a hospital setting if you're going to med school? Do you like working with people if you're interested in being a pharmacist? What are the options you have in mind right now? And first of all, can you elaborate on some of these options? Are there more that you're not seeing? And can you talk to someone to see what other options you have? How can you explore or test those options? Meaning that you might want to talk to someone who's doing that job right now and ask them what their day-to-day is like. Just a note that people are a lot more willing to talk about themselves than you think they are. So if you're willing to reach out, I'm sure you can find someone who can talk to you over coffee, or just meet up with you and have a little chat about their career. Who can be your mentor or mentors? Again, finding the right mentor is very important. Finding someone that you're compatible with and you can trust is very important. What is your goal in life and at school or work? The reason I bring this up is because a lot of people talk about work-life balance nowadays, and it is important. We need to prioritize our families and our life, but at the same time, you want to have a career built for yourself. So you need to understand your own comfort of how much balance you want. If it's a job that will require a lot of your time, are you committed to that? If it's a job that has a little bit more flexibility, is that what you want? So being true to yourself is very important, but the first step is asking yourself that question. Any questions so far? Okay. So I just have a few take-home messages, and then I'll open up for any kind of questions that you guys may have. My personal experience and my perspective is that co-op or kind of undergraduate work experiences are invaluable if you want to explore the field or industry. About 70% of employers offer full-time roles to graduating students after their successful internship. So you can see the work there is successful. You need to be able to work with people for them to hire you back, of course. And my personal experience is that, remember I talked about Techmera Pharmaceuticals, which is the co-op experience that I had. First of all, after I graduated, I worked there for the summer for 4 months before I started my graduate studies. So first of all, that gave me an opportunity to make some money before I started grad school. And secondly, Techmera actually, over time, was taken over and became a company called Arbutus. And Arbutus eventually moved to the States, and the people who were in Vancouver and didn't want to relocate to the States stayed and started a company called Genevant Sciences. And if you notice, I'm currently working at Genevant Sciences, which means that the people that I'm currently working with, a good chunk of them were people who were there when I was a co-op student. So I'm still working with people that I met during my co-op experiences. And a big reason is because we started that relationship so long ago. They could see how my work was. They could see that I was a team person that could work in a team. And eventually, even though I'm no longer a scientist, I decided to move on to project and alliance management. It's quite a jump from a research-based role to a management role. But considering my experiences and considering the relationships and network that I already built there, I was able to secure a full-time position there after moving out of Cooper's Pharmaceuticals. So that tells you that networking is really key to learning about your job opportunities and actually achieving them. You just never know what is going to happen in your career, and especially for the pharmaceutical industry, the biotech industry is very volatile, and in Vancouver there are not that many opportunities available because we're a small biotech hub, but there are a lot of people who have the skills to do well in it. And so for you to be able to succeed in the pharmaceutical industry, you really need to build that network, whether it is locally in Vancouver or in, somewhere else like in Boston or in the Bay Area. It is all about networking. You're never stuck in one place. But what you do need to do is you just have to keep learning new things and keep learning about yourself and what it is that you want to achieve for yourself. So I hope these messages will help you in figuring out what it is going to happen to your path. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions if you guys have any.
Well, first let's give Dr. Liang so much for joining us here virtually, but certainly here on campus. We're very excited that you were part of this class with us. Does anybody have any questions specifically for Dr. Liang and all of her different experiences that she's had across the board? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we don't have co-op open for our program yet. We do practicum. So do you know the difference between co-op and practicum? And if co-op does open for our program, would you suggest we keep that open practicum?
Did you get that?
It's hard for me to hear. Can you repeat that, Jessica?
Yeah, so we have a question about the difference between two types of work integrated learning experiences. One is a practicum placement that's part of the program for BPSC, which you're familiar with it, right? And then there's the co-op program, something that we are planning to offer at some point. We're just waiting for approvals. The question is, do you know the difference between practicum and co-op, and what are your thoughts on one over the other?
I think the practicum also is about, I think the practicum right now is offered for 4 months, right?
Yeah, it's 13 and a half weeks.
Yeah, so for the biotech program specifically, we were stuck with at least one 4-month opportunity because of the way that our courses were structured. So I took 2 4-month co-op and an 8-month co-op. So with the practicum, I think a lot of the experience may be more limited to that 4-month period, and a lot of biotech companies are not willing to take 4 months co-op students. The reason being that it could take a couple of months just to train you up to be able to perform that function really, really well. And then once you're trained, you're gone. So they're not really getting any productivity out of their co-op students. And that's why my Techmera experience was 8 months, because most industrial positions require at least an 8-month co-op. And sometimes if you're really good and they really want to keep you, they might even ask if you could extend to 12 months. So I think that practicum and the co-op experience are similar in terms of what the 4-month co-ops would offer. But if you're looking for something in the pharmaceutical industry, there will be fewer opportunities just because a lot of companies are not committed to the 4-month co-op experience, if that makes sense.
We're working on changing the program a little bit to offer that, but in the interim, what I was suggesting to students along the way is that if you are looking for a self-placement with an industry partner where you do your practicum placement, part of the program with them, aim for January, because then you do the practicum placement, it's unpaid, so they train you up from January to April, and then if they want to hire you, they can hire you over the summer from April to onwards, right? Or you can do that after.
That's a very, very good idea because most of them want an 8-month commitment. The other thing is, I think the practicum, if it is unpaid, it depends on where you're going. For example, I think BC Cancer is a little bit more reluctant to take volunteers than a paid person, but because it is under UBC, then they don't have the liability. As long as someone's taking care of the liability, an institute like BC Cancer might be more willing to take on students that way, if that makes sense.
Yes, good question. Any other questions for Dr. Liang? Go ahead.
Thank you again for taking the time to meet with us and teach us today. My question is kind of around building your network. I know you mentioned the importance of building your network. I think that's something that's fundamentally important no matter what industry you're in. And one lesson that I find particularly important is kind of continuing the time question is, when would you say is kind of the right timing, or in terms of both in research and kind of academia and also in industry as well, for students like us who are just in our second year but going forward in the future, if there is kind of a sort of interval or window of timing? I don't know if you have kind of an idea of that, but anything would be helpful.
That's a big question. Did you catch
Yeah,
that?
that's great. Yeah, I caught all of it. He's sitting up front enough. So, yeah, that's a great question. So I personally think that, timing is important, but you also want to be able to give that person, if you're reaching out to someone for help, you want to be able to give that person all the attention that you can have. So obviously not good timing when you're busy studying and you're trying to get some of your things done and your hands are tied. When you're an undergraduate student, I think reaching out to academia is, always a good idea, because they're, in your building right there, you can find a time to meet with your prof. Anything that, it can be just exploration. You can tell them, I'm interested, I don't know if I truly like it. Can I get a volunteer position at your lab? Or can I talk to some of your students and postdocs and see what it's like before I commit to, let's say, graduate studies. So these are things that you can do now, or you can go to events that are more for researchers. And as going to the right events at the right time, you're right, it's really important. So it's more like that door will open once you get into a certain network. So for example, we have something called Life Sciences BC for people who are in the industry, or who started working in the industry, and they provide workshops and events. And a lot of people don't go to those events, but there are also a lot of people who go to those events consistently, and you can meet people there and talk to different people. You don't have to be ready to jump onto a new job when you're talking to them. You can start building that network when you're thinking of exploring a different path. So if you're interested in business development and you're learning you're learning about the research side right now, you can start talking to people in business development before you, let's say, do your MBA, or before you take on education in that area. Again, people like to talk about themselves, so if you just go up to them at an event and say, hey, like, is it okay if I talk to you about this? Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience? I'm sure that 5 to 10 minute conversation is enough to give you some good ideas of whether or not you want to spend more time talking with that person. So attending these events when you feel ready is very important. Like you said, you have to be at the right timing, and part of that is when you actually feel ready. You don't want to just walk in and start talking to everybody, because they will feel like you're not actually interested. You're kind of scatterbrained at that point. You want to explore and do your own homework before you reach out to those people, for sure. I hope that answered your questions.
I'd like to add a couple of things to that too. When you're networking and you're talking to people and you're going out on LinkedIn, you don't have to have an ask of that person, right? You don't need to want a job or a mentor or something of that sort. It could be out of genuine interest that you want to speak with that person to get to know them a little bit better. So that's one thing, which makes the timing of it even better, right? Because what you're doing is you're just interested in that person. You want to get to know them. You want to get to know their experience. And the more you communicate with that person, the more they're going to think about you when things do come up and opportunities arise, right? So that's one. Two, with networking opportunities, it's scary. It's still scary to me, right?
It's scary.
And it takes practice. So if you feel like you want to attend a event, so for instance, there is a Life Science BC event for students coming up at the end of this month, and I highly recommend to go to it. It is for you. It's the Career Connect event. I do tell all of the third year students to go because it's the right timing for them. They're transitioning to trying to get back to junior co-op. But for you as well, it might be a good opportunity sorry,
Yeah.
to interrupt there, but,
No, that's great, that's great.
pitch those ideas as well.
It's a very good question and it's great and you can make a friend. In the end, it's not about getting something from them like Jessica said. It's all about getting to know what's out there and the first step is learning about what people are doing, learning what's out there. There will be some jobs that you've never even heard of and you'll be surprised that they're focused positions on those things and you might be interested in them.
Consider this your first networking opportunity talking to folks like this. And I like that you'll make a friend, but you should take a friend, take a buddy. It cuts the edge off if you go with someone. Any other questions? Go ahead at the back.
I was wondering, when it comes to trying to find co-op opportunities or even like placements, if you're from an area where there's maybe not a lot of biotech companies or pharmaceutical industries, like for me, example, I'm from New Brunswick, so there's like none of those things whatsoever. So I'm just wondering, like, what are some good alternatives, alternative fields for something that has to do with, that's something to do with pharmaceuticals that will be like good to get a step into practicum or co-op opportunities?
We didn't hear that.
It's hard. I heard some of it, but not all of it.
So let me see if I summarize this correctly. So if you're from a place where there might not be that same level of pharmaceutical industry, what are some other ways to get practicum experiences? And the example was, say, in New Brunswick, where there's not a lot of biotech and life sciences companies, what would be some other opportunities to make that?
Well, if you're willing to, you can relocate and go for a place for 4 months, 8 months. I have friends in my biotech class who went to Montreal for a co-op opportunity. You could travel, and that is a great excuse for living on your own and traveling and getting some experience that way. Other alternatives you can consider whether there are, it won't be in the industry, but something would be in the government sector. Is there something in the health sector that you can consider? So those would be my suggestion is travel if you're young and you're willing to live somewhere for a few months, pick an interesting place. That for sure is a really good experience. Anything you want to add, Jessica, there?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, that government agencies are everywhere, every province has them. You can do co-ops at hospitals too. You can do co-ops at hospitals where they might be doing some clinical research in pharmaceuticals, right? So think about that as an opportunity to work in that central part of the discovery pipeline. We always think at the bench, in the lab, but there's a lot that goes into research that's outside the bench. And then the last thing I'll say is I have seen lots of opportunities that are virtual as well. So if you want to be positioned in New Brunswick, but you want to do a virtual, less bench-like work, those are opportunities that are available too. Any other questions? Go ahead.
It seems like the shift from like science to business was sort of like a major shift. I was just wondering, because you had like a mutual comparator sort of experience. Was there anything in specific that made you want to shift, like from that experience, made you shift from like science and research to like business?
Did you finish that, April?
I think that's what was the reason for the shift, the big shift from the science to the management side, right? Yeah, so personally, I think there are two aspects to it. The first aspect is that I've been a bench scientist for more than 10 years at that point. I was starting to get tired of it. Like I said, when you grow up, you start to change your perspective and what you want and what you see yourself doing will start changing. And so that's one aspect of it is that I was, wanting a change and realizing that there are other things out there like how to manage a business, how to manage a project. That's becoming more interesting to me. Some people will argue that, well, I want to be a scientist and I'll always want to be a scientist, and that's completely fine. For me, that there was actually a shift because I think I wanted to do more translational research, and I understand that it is not done by one person, it is done as a team. And it's up to you to choose which part of the team you want to be, right? Like, so you can be either the scientist, the one figuring out the technology, or you can be the one managing the technology. And I think from my experience, just from all the things that I was doing at the time, I decided that it was time for me to move on. It was, part of it was a gut feeling, and the other part of it is the growth. I now have a family with two little kids, so for me, shifting into the management stream also gave me a lot more flexibility and a lot more of a balance. I don't have to be on site. I can work 100% remotely if that's what I want. I also still go to the office and see people and connect with people because that's really important for my job. But at the same time, now I have the flexibility to continue to do what I enjoy doing and still be able to manage with a young family. And that's why I say, when you grow up from a different, from when you're in your undergraduate, you're keen to work on your career. You continue to be keen on your career, but it may change over time because of other things that you want to balance. It doesn't mean that you give up your career. It just means that you might find more interest in doing something else after doing the same thing, for 10, 15 years. So I hope that answered your question.
I would say opportunity too. You don't know where opportunities are gonna come from, and sometimes you see something that pops up and your immediate response is, no, I would never do that. But if you're open to it, you never know where that opportunity will take you next, right? So I think that was for you too, the opportunity to build your own business.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that did, I took that on and it actually took me to a different direction and I never expected that. I thought for a while that I would always be a scientist.
We have time for
So-
one more question. One more question. Okay, well, I have a question for you. Dr. Liao, will you consider sharing your contact information and your slides with us?
Oh yeah, of course. And you guys can find me on LinkedIn and message me if you want.
Excellent. You have your first networking opportunity here. LinkedIn invitation ready. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone. I will see all of you next week on Tuesday. Thank you so much, Dr. Liang, again for being with us. We'll give you another round of applause.
Thank you for having me.